Hello everyone, that was a very quick week and so here I am again, and this week I'm painting a landscape and including a figure in my scene. It's always beneficial to include some life into a landscape. It makes a huge difference and gives the scene some movement and another reason for having painted that particular aspect. So I've decided on a scene which includes some tricky things which people find challenging, which is, I don't know if you can see this very well, it's not a very distinct photograph I've got here, but I quite liked it. And it includes steps which people find challenging, and also I'm hoping to leave a lot of white paper in this. So that's another thing that people are going to find, difficult. So it's a good idea to think about the rule of tonal value, whereby if you're painting up against a light area, use darks, and the other way around. And also include some darks in every picture that you paint, especially one where you're leaving a lot of white paper. So that's what I'm aiming for today. I'm keeping a fairly limited palette, which you can see there. Some of my favourite colours in there. And I'm going to, because my building and the steps really, and the wall, are going to be kept quite light, leaving as much white paper as I can. I'm actually going to put in a very bright Mediterranean sky. So I'm actually using Windsor Blue for that, which is a lovely bright colour on its own. It's Windsor Blue red shade, but if you haven't got that, you could use a Prussian blue. That's always a nice strong blue to use in a nice Mediterranean sky. Right, so I'm going to carefully wet the sky area. I've put wide tape around my block again because I wanted to actually create a slightly smaller painting, and I think if you do the same you may find it easier not to have to fill a huge space, because of including my figure. He's not very big, but he's actually, there isn't a figure in my photograph, so I've actually just popped a figure in on the steps, and I want him to become, if possible, the central focal point. So I hope I've placed him well, and that if I can make him stand out, that's where the eye is going to go when anyone looks at the painting. Right, so load my brush with this lovely deep blue. And I'm not going to particularly worry about any cloud areas. There's only one patch of cloud in my photograph anyway, and it's not in a good place, and I wouldn't want to copy it. And I just feel that with a Mediterranean sky like this and a lot of white paper being left everywhere else, it might be better to just have a nice sky without any cloud. So this is going to dry up later. And I'm tipping my block so that it runs back towards the top of my page, where it needs to be deeper in colour, if possible. So this is a nice graded sky, which hopefully is slightly lighter on the horizon. I've popped some hills in here which don't really appear particularly on my photo, but I'm sort of at the same time sort of thinking about including other things that we've worked on this time. And so we've got buildings, we've got a bit of foliage here, we've got some hills and the dreaded steps. So I've actually got to wait now for this to dry really, because I don't want to touch my wall area until it is dry, so I'll stop and hang on for it to dry. I've dried this with the hairdryer, which isn't necessarily the best idea because it tends to go a little flatter and maybe paler than it would if it dried naturally, because what's happening there is the hairdryer is pushing the paint back into the paper, and so it's not being allowed to dry up on the surface quite so well. So only do that if you have to. Otherwise, try to be patient. Right, so I can see only a tiny bit of, I'm working over my tape, I can see just a tiny bit of tiling because I'm looking up at the picture today as opposed to looking down on some of the landscapes that I've worked on this month with you. So this time I'm looking up, and so I'm not seeing very much of the top of the building, but there is a little bit of tiling showing here. And I'm using a mop brush at the minute. A bit more here. A little tiny part of a house there, because that's the thing that's giving me a nice sense of distance. The fact that this is a large one that up against the forefront of the picture, but then with that one being smaller, it's showing some distance. So we're going to have to think about perspective a little bit this week. I'm actually just running a little bit of raw sienna underneath here while this is still damp, because actually there's quite a little bit of yellow showing up on this wall, which I love. Yellow, and especially this side where the sun I think is coming. Against the blue that's showing in the wall as well, which is going to look lovely, the yellow and the blue together. Okay, so touching as little as I can. Right, so there's got to be something going on in the wall obviously, so I'm going to start by dampening just part of the wall area here to get some texture with my next colour. But if I don't wash water right over it and colour right over it, it's not then going to fill in, and I'm going to be able to leave that white paper that I'm hoping for. So I'm just creating little bits of texture here. I can't see very much, but there is some around the, I think it's brickwork that's been whitewashed over the top. So you're seeing the indentations of the brick in there where the shadow is. So not only am I using the ultramarine blue, I'm also going to put a few little touches of neutral tint on there. So it's going to dry up much lighter, So it's still going to be a very light coloured wall. So I did just a light drawing originally, touching as little as possible. There is actually some greenery coming into the edge of my picture here, which I may just pop in, because there's shadow here which is going to add some interest. So I'll pop some shadow in and put the greenery in afterwards. But I do want to show up the edge of the wall. Which is not level, it's not straight. So there's much more shadow and colour in this side of the wall than there is this side, so I'm obviously putting more in here, and I can keep a lovely white light area there. But now it's got a lovely sunny appearance here. I don't know if you can see on the photo this lovely sunny area here. So raw sienna again as a little base, making it slightly yellower with some no gamboge. So dropping water back in is the thing that's going to give some texture and shapes here. This is where the steps end. It's a bit darker there. That's still a bit wet to do much with right now, but there's no reason why I shouldn't just pop in a little bit of the greenery at the side. I'll stick with this brush. Keeping it as loose as I can. That's giving a nice little bit of interest at the side. I like where it's gone onto the wetted area there. So, see what happens. Just drop a little bit of water back on. Point of the brush. And just leave, I think. So, good. But it's got to have a bit more texture into the wall where the yellow sunny bit is. So mixing the neutral tint with the ultramarine is actually going to give a nicer colour, softer grey. I think I'll come back to this when it's a bit drier. But I quite like what's happened. It's not overworked, so leave it. Now I'll work, well actually I can just do the window, I think. There's a little tiny window, and I don't want to put a lot of work into it. It's got the same colour as on the rooftop, which is nice to be able to bring that same colour back down. And when that's maybe it's looking a little too perfect, so I'm just going to put some water around one side of it. So I've indicated that window without being too detailed and particular about it. Right, now I need to work on this part of the wall. And I'm going to have to work hard to try not to have it look too boring. It's a wide expanse, so I'm going to have to do something here to make it look somewhat more interesting. But because it's got lovely colours in it, it should look okay. So I want to largely leave it light if I can. I don't quite understand why it is looking so blue, unless of course it was a blue wall painted underneath the whitewash in the first instance. It actually has an area of wall that protrudes, but I don't know if I'm going to go for that. There's the top of it, and this bit, I wonder if it's a part of a church. This bit comes out, so I could, I don't know, partly indicate that, I guess, by doing something like this. To be honest, I hadn't really noticed that before. So it does something like this. And this. Well, I suppose that's created a little bit of interest. It doesn't protrude very much actually, just there, and then it becomes level again. But there's a lovely lot of blue here. And a nice little dark corner here, which is nice up against the steps. So there's a lot of dropping water back in on a wall like this to make lovely natural colour and shapes with your watercolour paint. So if I leave that bit light and work on this area here that's nice and colourful, hopefully I'm going to end up with something that's interesting. And textured looking. Lots of sort of, I think there was something built here with brick at the side that's tumbled down a bit. Bring some of this colour back in that we've used up on the tiles. Keeps the picture together, adds interest. There's a crack in the wall here. Which I've waited to pop in because I didn't want it to fade away in the water. So I'm going to break that up a bit. It looked a little bit too precise. So keep an eye on what you've done in case you do need to go back and just add a little bit more interest. Fine. Right, I like what's happening down here. This is drying up nicely, so might just do a little bit more of that. Not everything has to make complete sense. Leave areas and particular shapes and sections for the viewer to decide for itself what is going on there. Right, I need to get a bit of a move on here. I think I'll stop while I just do a little bit more of this wall because I've still got quite a lot to do and I'm running out of time. I've finished this wall and I've painted the wall of this smaller house, dropped water back in, starting on the wall here, which has got a lot of white in it again. So just dotting in some neutral tint on this wall and some of the other colours that I've already used just to keep it all together. And there's a lovely sunny area on that part of the wall again, which was nice to pop in. So trying to keep this again as light as I can, but the top of the wall has been whitewashed in the same way as the walls and everywhere else, and so I've got to put some colour into the wall here because the top of the wall has got to stay white. So quickly just creating some texture here and making it look like stones and bricks and texture. Lots of colours in there, but still a lot of white left. Steps finish here. So I'm filling the page, and then when I take the masking off, I'm going to have nice light edge. Right, I'll leave that because it's going to be better to be allowed to dry, and then I can pop a shadow on it. I'm going to leave the top of the wall more or less as it is because it's got foliage behind it which is going to show it up, but it's going to have something on it, otherwise it's a complete no man's land. So a little tiny touch of some colour will create just enough shadow and texture to show that there's something there. Right, and now I'm going to work on the steps and leave the down. The top of the step seems to be a deeper colour, and the rest was supposed to be white, but it's kind of changed because they're slightly worn. But there's some colour, so I've got to concentrate that I now put the colour onto the right part of the step. But right up here you're not going to see the part that you put your foot on anyway, because it's too high. So putting a little bit of blue, trying to change. Got to work around my man. Still can't see the top of the step. But it does seem to be getting slightly lighter as we come down into sunshine. Lovely sunny Greece. Bring some warmth back in because I think there may be a gap between that building and this building, because otherwise the sun wouldn't be shining through there. So I'm actually dropping some sunny colour here. So just think about where you are, what you're doing, and what might be going on in your particular scene. The more I look at it, the more sure I am that there is a gap through there, which is showing up this nice light, bright area. And now I'm starting to see, there's an upright here, but I'm starting to see the top of the steps now. So I'm just using a round brush, not being too particular about it, but hopefully making sense of the picture and telling the right story. But I'm going to leave the uprights from now on white and put the dark on the bit that you step on. But at the same time, touching a little bit with another colour so that it isn't completely white but starts to look slightly worn and older with various colours that we've already used. So steps can be tricky, but I think if you concentrate and get a good drawing in the first instance, and concentrate when you're painting them, you're going to make it look good. gone off-piste again. Here's the wall, and I just wanted to darken it beside the steps a bit and put that texture back in. There. Should do it. Nice little dark section underneath this top part of the wall, which could be protruding. And there are two sections of it. It sort of stops, goes down, and then carries on. But while it's still slightly damp, it's a good time to go back and look at things like that. Right, carry on with the steps. Now I've got to think about what I'm going to dress him in when it comes to it. He may look better left quite white. Not sure. Dropping water back in is always such a lovely technique to use when you're painting a nice landscape like this and wanting texture, so practice that. Now here's a big expansive step here, so I don't want to fill that in and block it in. The temptation is to do so because that's what it looks like on the page, but I don't think that's going to look great in my picture, so I'm going to be careful. Define the edges a bit, or at least one side, and I'm going to use some dry brushwork, just pulling that across, letting some light come back onto that step. It's obviously stonework, so it's going to have texture, and leave it like that, I think. Let's see when we put the next bit on. It's very dirty here and chafed, sort of partly chipped away. Lovely to let that run down and make nice marks. And maybe this is a good opportunity just in this corner here to make it slightly darker. Any opportunity to put a nice dark area in, go for it. Right, this part of the step is looking blue. Goodness me. But as I've said lots of times, you don't have to do what you see in your photograph, just use it for reference. There. It does this. So, they look like tiles now. They're starting to look like tiles now. We're getting nearer to the front. So that's added a bit of interest there. So, not made too much of this at the foreground because I want the eye to go straight up there to my man. The wall up here is very, very, very light, so I'm not going to put very much on there at all, if anything. It's looking blue here. So back to the blue. And then we've got some foliage behind the wall. Now I've got to decide whether to leave it this sort of yellowy colour or to pop some green in. So I think what I'm going to do is use the green to balance with the green over the other side. So again, don't always paint in what you see, just paint what you know is going to help in your picture. So not putting a lot of detail or effort into this. I don't really want it to shout too loudly, but I do think it's going to show the top of the wall up better, this colour anyway, than if I use the raw sienna colour. But I'm going to leave some light coming through. Might have been better to have painted those hills first, but I'm rushing a bit now. Always try to concentrate, especially when you reach this part of your picture, which is nearly the end. You really don't want to make a big mistake at this point. There. So that's popped a little bit of greenery in. Be nice to have a darker patch just here behind, straight behind the wall in this corner, showing off that corner, showing off that corner, making that wall look lighter there. Another little corner here, and then leave. Got to be a little bit of something on this wall here, but not much. Really so far away, can't see very much apart from white, but a little touch of sunshine on there. Now I've just got my little man to do, oh, the hills. So, what to do? Bigger brush to start, and I think I'll use this greeny grey. I don't want those hills to shout loudly. Have a piece of paper at the side always to try your colours. Don't want these hills to overtake. So I'm actually just going in with water at the base here, because they want to be distant. Another part of a hill here, going out of the page. Didn't really want, that's just water there, so hopefully that'll dry up without showing up that patch that I've just created there. That's better. That's fine. Right, so smaller brush now, concentrate on my person who's very nonchalantly walking up there. Small brush again. He was bald in my photo, but I've actually decided to give him some hair. Can't see much flesh, but if you use alizarin crimson with a little touch of raw sienna in it, he's going to have a tan. Just see his arms here. He's wearing a t-shirt and his neck. And then I'm going to give him a t-shirt with some stripes. That will help camouflage against the steps. That's going to help to take the eye right up there to him now. There we go. It's not too stripy and unnatural looking, I hope. And I'm going to leave his trousers white with a little bit of shadow. And a dark shoe. Can't see his other foot. There we go. So there he is. My figure. So it doesn't take much to actually put a small figure into your pictures, but it actually makes a very big difference. Messed up there a bit. Stop it, touch, don't touch. Right, so there's my empty picture. And there's my picture with my man in it. All it really needed was now to put a little bit more definition into this wall in the way of shadow around the stones, but I'll do that afterwards. But it ought to have little shadow. I can see his shadow coming over the wall and down. Only a light one, but it makes for more interest. So that's the shadow on the top of that white wall, and when that's dry I can still put some definition into my little stone work there. Right, I'll stop while I take the tape off. Right, all I've done is to, I've taken the tape off, I've put a little bit more texture into the wall, but I don't think I'll put any more on because it's going to take the eye too much away from the focal point. But one more thing I thought I could put in, that actually is in the picture, and I wasn't going to, there's a little bit of bougainvillea popping out from behind this wall. So I thought if I just pop that in, it also helps, there's another thing that's going to help the eye to go up to the focal point. So that's it. That's my demo, and I'm not too unhappy with it as demos go. That's not, you know, I think I've ticked the boxes that I wanted to tick with keeping a lot of white paper, at the same time as hopefully putting enough in to give definition and to tell the story. I also, well, I originally wondered whether I would paint this scene, which I know very well, as do several of you. but there was too much work in it and it would have taken too long. But I have painted it just to show you another figure that wasn't actually in the photograph, obviously. Decided to put a figure there, which I did. So try to choose this week something similar to paint, something that you know, hopefully, and pop a figure in. And painting something that's a scene from abroad always gives you the option of putting lots of lovely colour in, so that's another good thing, especially as our weather is changing and getting better and making you think about summer holidays and so on. So have a good week, everyone, and enjoy painting something with a figure. Your optional extra this week is some irises, which I shall also be attaching for you, your extra video. And next week is the start of a new set, and I'm going to start working with line and wash again, maybe using it for various different things, even maybe flowers, we'll see. Okay, so have a good week, everyone. Take care. Bye bye.